Up next is the conversation. It is a panel discussion on Unleash the combined power of digital journey and RPA for maximum impact. Part 1. We have some really special people on the panel, but I will introduce the moderator for this session, and all the panelists will be introduced by the moderator himself. Moderating the next session is the CEO, Cloud 4C RPA Services. I am really sorry for this. I'm sorry. Moderating this session is Mr. B.S. Rao. Mr. B.S. Rao is the Vice President Marketing of Control S. And sir, over to you.
Thank you, Kriti. Thank you very much. Let me take the opportunity to introduce two special ladies out here. Kritika from NASSCOM. She spearheads 10,000 startup initiatives as the director. And welcome, Kritika, to this panel discussion. And welcome. And Irina Ghosh, who's the Executive Director, Cloud Solutions at Microsoft. So Irina, warm welcome.
Thank you.
Warm welcome to both the ladies. And so now as startups, all of us would be keen to know, what are you two ladies doing through your own organizations to enhance the growth of the startups, right? And through the ecosystem support. So let me go to Kritika. Kritika, could you tell us, what role is NASSCOM playing to support technology startups in the country?
Thank you, Mr. B.S. Rao. And firstly, thank you for having me on this panel. Huge privilege to be on this panel. Thank you first.
Yes.
Typically our journey started with evangelizing tech startups as early as 2012. And that's when we came up with the initiative of, the 10,000 startups. Very, very ironically at that time, the focus so much was, the entrepreneurs were young, nobody was giving them space to work from, right? And we never even thought that would be a problem, right? And that's when we came up with, the different, incubators, which we call as, the warehouses, because at that time, the concept of co-working spaces was almost nil, right? And then we worked with different state governments and set up these warehouses where we were able to provide a very safe and conducive environment for young startups to come and work from. So it was not just about the space, right? It was all about how do we give them the right kind of mentoring? How do we help them evolve their idea? How do we give them the different support systems to get their startup going, whether it's registration, whether it's IP creation, whether it is, what are the different kind of tech tools. And of course, we got a lot of support from the ecosystem, from different players in terms of the various tools and technologies that they were able to provide free of cost to a lot of these startups to help grow. So if I have to just say, what we do has completely evolved over the last 7-8 years. Initially, it was, completely focused on, mentorship, which we continue to do. That's the number one thing that we do. But one thing is, from an overall mentorship now, it's a lot more on tech mentorship that we look at. Tools, technologies, right? The right kind of mentors, the right kind of connect to the investors, the right kind of hand-holding overall in their, formation of their company. And what has also changed the game for us in the last 7 years is the enterprise connect and what corporates have started bringing to the table in terms of, adopting some of these startup solutions, co-creating some of these startup, working along with these startups in terms of co-creating the solutions and being their first customers and helping them evolve. I think that has really changed the thing that we see today. Right. While we continue to do the incubation, virtual incubation, investor connect, mentor connect, but each of these things have really evolved, right? Today, as 10,000 startups, we've impacted close to 6,500 startups, tech startups only, and our focus is pretty much on B2B startups, right? But the evolution that we've seen is phenomenal. The kind of startups that we see is phenomenal. And I do want to point out one thing here is, so we're also seeing, especially in the tech area, we're also seeing the age of the average co-founder being a little higher than what it used to be. So from their needs perspective, what earlier used to be, very, very thing about, mentorship, investor, raising funds, and then came, customer kind of a thing. But I think that's kind of changed a lot now, because they seem to, there is a lot more runway money with a lot of these startups. So we're seeing customer connects being the first ask. And then comes funding, and then comes very specific mentoring. They don't want overall mentoring. They want very specific kind of mentoring, which they're able to detail out. I'll stop with this, and but that's the quick landscape as of now.
Beautiful. So thank you, Kritika, for outlining and sharing with us as to what NASSCOM is actually doing. So let me therefore go to Irina. Irina, what are the initiatives, let's say top 3 initiatives that Microsoft has taken up in the recent years to, help the startup and the, what you call fast growing enterprises?
Yeah, so actually, riding on top of whatever Kritika said, so in the startup space in the last 24 months, we really took a conscious decision to look at specific programs. And a lot of these have actually evolved over the years. So Microsoft for Startups is a global program for startup enablement that leverages the Microsoft's commercial marketplaces, its enterprise sales teams, the partner org to reach really key global customers. So the program members here have an access to a dedicated startup engagement manager who work with them to unlock the potential of their venture. They get customized go-to-market plans. We provide 24/7 technical support and a worldwide enterprise sales force, which is also working to help them to reach critical customers. Then comes M12, which is Microsoft's venture fund, which is focused on investing in B2B software startups, specifically in the areas of applied AI, business applications, infrastructure security, and various other vanguard technologies as well. So M12 seeks to invest in disruptive enterprise software evolution areas through Series A to C through funding stages. Now M12 also has a presence in India, and some of the ones that we've funded include FarEye, Innovacers, etc. Apart from this, when you look at the Microsoft India team itself, we've got a Microsoft dedicated team for unicorns to grow lighthouse motions for startups so that they can better serve their ecosystem. We also have now the partner ecosystem, which takes these solutions, builds things on top of them, and takes this across to their customers. So there's actually from a partnering to a partnership, which is happening, and that becomes a force multiplier as well. And working in tandem to all these efforts, we actually have a renewed energy and effort which is coming in from the startups in terms of the engineering asks, research asks. So the engineering team and the Microsoft research team, which is based out in India, also work very closely with them. In fact, India is the only country, only region where we have invested in a very strong tech pod, where the Azure engineering team is working very closely with the startups as they grow through their journey.
Beautiful. I mean, this is very interesting, Irina. So I'm sure, as you go forward, the startups will continue to, gain from the partnership model that you mentioned. So coming back to Kritika, see, NASSCOM is, I think, nurtured close to about 10,000 startups. But what is your observation in terms of the pain points? I mean, what are the typical pain points? Let's say top 3 pain points of startups. And then how is NASSCOM working towards solving these challenges? Could you throw some light on that, Kritika?
Yeah, sure. So, thank you for this question, right, Mr. B.S. Rao. And so the couple of things, right? So firstly, the 10,000 startups, we focus on very early stage startups, right? And then we have now what we have built over the years, our whole NASSCOM product initiative has grown phenomenally well, especially through, it's a very community driven program. And then we have a Center for Excellences, right? So what we see as, key points, key pain areas, right? I think one is, their access to talent, right? When I say that in terms of, especially, skill sets in terms of product management, right? Because what we've also seen is a lot of product diversification happening. And I think one is, so the talent that the startups kind of, really want, and the affordability around that. I think the talent is number one. Two is, it's a very mixed game in terms of funding, right? And so there is funds, but how do you reach those funds, right? I think is the second one. And I think the third one is, which I will keep repeating again and again, is access to deep tech mentoring. Right, I think we've come to that point where we need a lot more help for our startups in terms of deep tech mentoring, right? And I think if we can, because today the ecosystem has evolved so much that there's so much more support in terms of many other aspects, right? And I will re-emphasize the support that comes in from enterprises. And I think the other point is, which Irina also pointed out, is the research ability, right? They want a lot more research help, because by themselves, they're not able to spend that much time on some of those research pieces that they need, right? So we've been trying to work with different academic incubators and different academic, academic institutions and universities on saying how can they help in building some of these research facilities for their startups as well. So yeah, those are a few things that I would cap it at.
Thanks, Kritika. Thank you. In fact, there is a statistic which mentions that only 80% of the small businesses survive the first year. And this is shocking, isn't it? We also know that about 50,000 entrepreneurs begin their journey every day. So they have a hope. They want to create something of their own, of their passion. So, Irina, I want to ask you, therefore, COVID-19 has not been very nice to business people and especially startups.
Right.
Could I take the liberty to ask you a question as to, hey, how is Microsoft helping, startups and the fast-growing enterprises during the COVID-19 pandemic? Could you throw some light over there, Irina?
Sure. So I'll first cover the things which are kind of applicable to both the scenarios, and then I'll cover certain things for the startup space as well.
Sure.
So if you look at it, there were actually a few trends which came up very, very clearly. Number one, cloud being at the heart of driving digital transformation. And in the context of that, hybrid being an essential choice that customers really wanted to make. Number two, it was data. Data is pervasive, but as we know, insights are really elusive. So data at the heart of driving digital conversations and taking real-time analytics-led insights for decision making. You really want to see that whatever data came in last night, the insights of that can be used for your decision for tomorrow. Number three was actually security, privacy, and compliance. How do you kind of ensure that you gain the trust of your customers and you have an enterprise which is really foolproof to the extent that you can make it? And the trend number four was essentially towards business effectiveness drivers. How can you remote everything? How can you automate everything? How can you simulate everything? So in context of that, some of the things that we really did was for the remote scenarios and the hybrid working scenarios, we really worked across with organizations for communication, collaboration through Microsoft Teams. And I think everybody knows the statistics as to how any kind of virtual collaborations have grown manifold. We also provided virtual desktops, the Windows virtual desktops, which could be taken across to the cloud. Specifically for startups, when you look at the business, there is a need to sustain the customer base and also to grow. So with lockdowns, the organizations were really forced to make everything available on the internet. And we provided secure storage, computation power to run the apps and services in a very secure environment. So Azure IP Advantage, frankly, provides a very comprehensive solution against IP risks to startups through Azure, basically. And we also built specific tools, programs to support the startup ecosystem. And in context of this, there are two of them that we built specific to domains in the health and agri-tech. So the idea here was that we help the startups scale with GTM, domain, and ensure that they have a way of stitching these things together. And we also collaborated with the startup incubator, Social Alpha, to accelerate the growth of all the participating startups here too. Back to you, Mr. Rao.
Sorry, yeah. So, Irina, we we'd like you to throw some light on the go-to-market strategy that you talked about for support that you spoke about the startups, because for them gaining access to markets is a very difficult proposition. So, could you detail out as to what is in the GTM strategy, if you can elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So there are a few things that we do, and from a GTM strategy, there's above the line and below the line both kinds of help and support that we provide. What we also do is we integrate the startups into our key Microsoft events. So we do a lot of events which are specific to verticals, and customers actually want agile solutions which are solving here and now and immediate needs which the startup ecosystem brings. So in our events, we make it a very cohesive and seamless overall proposition that we take across to our customers. We also invest in joint content creation, video case studies, blogs, joint launch, PR events, so on and so forth. But I think the other differentiator which the startups really value is the way we have an end-to-end story that we take across with them to our customers. Because if you look at it, we have our startups, Microsoft for Startups, which kind of grooms, takes them across. We have the startup pods, which kind of provides all the tech enablement mentorship. But we also have the sales team, which works in tandem with these two arms to ensure that we take the startups and our customers and grow this ecosystem as a very committed way towards ensuring there's a win-win on both sides.
Beautiful. This is excellent. I think, Irina, next time we plan the, entrepreneurship summit, probably, we should work together to attract that ecosystem within this and get them to the marketplace so that we can together, formulate the GTM strategy. Congratulations. That's a good one. So let me get back to Kritika. And Kritika, here we have some rapid fire questions for you, because on the other end, Irina actually detailed out as to what they're doing to help startups. So the first question is, how is NASSCOM, accelerating startups, and what are the initiatives? I think that you have Accelerate 10x initiative. Will you throw some light on that in about 30 seconds?
Yeah, so more than the Accelerate 10x, I think it's also the other initiatives of NASSCOM, like under the product initiative, we have a Deep Tech Club, we have the Emerge 50, right, where startups from the 10,000 startups pool, which is more horizontal, then kind of graduate and go into these two programs, right, and they get like some very, very specific kind of mentoring and market connects. Not just in India, but globally through our global access programs, and also very specific handholding through the COEs for IoT and data science. So it's a complete holistic program that comes together.
Wonderful. Now that we have the women on the panel, let me ask you about the Tech WE initiative, Tech WE program. Could you throw some light on that? Yes.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Birsa. So the TechWe program is, while we've always had a mandate to help tech women entrepreneurs grow, but we've launched a new program after a very in-depth study in terms of the specific kind of gaps that women tech entrepreneurs have and the exact kind of intervention that they need. And, we're starting with them from a very idea validation stage, and then we're looking at not just we're doing two things. One is building a community, a larger community of tech women entrepreneurs, and the other side is where we're picking up, about cohorts of about 30, 40 companies and putting them through literally an 8-month program, and we want to help them grow from point A to point B in terms of revenue, customer acquisition, and in terms of their team size.
Not very surprising. It is said that 80% of all buys in a family are influenced by women and children. 80% of that, 85%, let's say 80% are influencing the entire economy. And the fact that women entrepreneurs are shaping up the worldwide economies is certainly very, very interesting. So thanks for throwing that insight on Tech Week program. Could you also tell us more about the virtual incubation program that NASCOM has initiated?
So this was a complete, while we were doing the physical incubation and we continue to do that, it was very important for us to launch a virtual incubation program, which we did about 4 years back, to reach out to startups in tier 2, tier 3 cities and give them all the benefits that, apart from the space, everything else in terms of tools, technologies, mentoring, connects, global access, everything. Right. In fact, during this pandemic, we in terms of the virtual incubation, we have an increase of close to 38 more cities and about a participation of a 50% plus increase in terms of the virtual incubation. And we're seeing some exceptionally good startups coming in from tier 2, tier 3 cities. And, we're actually very proud of our virtual incubation program.
That's very interesting, Kritika. Could you tell us in about 20 seconds, what does it take for somebody to be a part of this virtual incubation program?
So they will just have to go into our website. There's a link. It's a 4-step registration process. The team will come back to you. They'll ask you a few questions about what you do, because we can only take tech entrepreneurs, right? Tech product related ideas. Yeah. So we ask a few questions. One of the teammates will call them, do a brief interview, and board them back into the system. They have to register also on something called a NASCOM Startup Hub that we've built and developed over the year. We have close to 6,000 B2B startups there today, and they become part of that community. And and then they can, be part of the system.
Beautiful. For a country which is blessed with about 63 million entrepreneurs out of the world's 582 million, NASCOM in tech space seems to be a blessing. So Kritika, thank you for throwing so much light on the overall initiatives. We're very happy to know that NASCOM is nurturing a lot of tech startups. And I'm confident that as the initiative began during Devang Mehta's time, which is continuing beyond probably 3 decades now, we wish NASCOM great success as it continues to foster entrepreneurship. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and for spending time with us. And I know that you have to leave. You have an engagement. So I appreciate your time. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And Irina, was an absolute pleasure sharing the platform with you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Rao. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Kritika. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Irina, over to you now. So let me ask you, NASCOM has spoken about many initiatives. Now let's come back to Microsoft and focus as to what are the specific initiatives that you're taking in terms of cloud solutions, whether it's cloud, Azure, or otherwise MS Office or Microsoft Dynamics. What do startups and fast-growing companies have to, what can they look up to in terms of the solutioning and, in terms of specialized offerings that Microsoft brings in? Now, why I'm asking this question is very simple. See, startups cannot afford too much money to spend to be spent in terms of, CapEx. So therefore, cloud becomes a beautiful solution. It's a OpEx-based solution. Could you throw some light in terms of the O365 and the Microsoft Dynamics as well?
Sure, absolutely. So when you think about the overall platform, we actually have the cloud spanning across what we call it the 3 clouds, which is O365. It's across Azure and Dynamics. So it's a multi-cloud solution that we have, right? And we've got 5 solution areas. So right from what we do across on collaboration, communication, to what we do on apps and infra on the Azure platform, data on the Azure platform, business applications, and security. So these are the 5 solution areas. And the reason I kind of talk about this, because customers now are thinking about the entire set of platform requirements when they are looking at how to look at the investments. Where is the overall integration coming across? Where is the seamlessness coming across? And where's the cost effectiveness coming across? So when you look at the first one, which is you talked about specifically on O365. Now, that has become a larger story with Microsoft 365. It brings across critical components of what you do if you were collaborating and communicating as a user. Now, of course, at the heart of it lies communication. So, what do you do across with, say, products like Teams? How do you store the overall set of documentation? Then it goes across to what are the senses that you're getting. So there are so many people communicating. How are you ensuring that you have the right set of insights which are coming across? And associated with that, how are you ensuring that there's a large footprint of these users who are exposed to various kinds of cyber threats, cyber crimes, the security component of it? So our security posture tends to be led through identity. So that's the key differentiator. And I mean, you will see the way customers are looking at the security needs. It's a burning need right now. And which is why I was saying that when you are looking at security, it's not just are you protecting your assets. When startups are building up their solutions to be given across to their enterprise, how secure, compliant, and abiding by the privacy laws are your components as well. So there's a slew of offerings that we bring across in these areas. And in fact, on both on the security front, a solution which is very close to my heart is Sentinel, which is our cloud native solution on the CIM platform. And that's something that is finding a lot of vibrancy across our entire enterprise space as well. Coming across to Azure, so the three parts that we really look at very closely is that how are we ensuring that the solutions are very scalable so that, I mean, the billions of people have access to the computing power, which is the need for all the startups as well. The innovation and the reliability and the cost effectiveness. In context to this, there's something that we launched very recently, which was the Synapse Analytics Purview, which is actually bringing the data governance and the analytics together for the first time. And if you think about it, people think about governance and analytics as two separate motions. But the need, as you would have seen, in times such as now, is that that really has to be at the heart of everything that you're building. The other part is also hybrid and the hyper cloud infrastructure that we are building across. And that is finding a lot of relevance in today's scenarios because say what you may, there will be customers or enterprises or the way you need to build up the solutions need to be thought of as not always cloud native. There could be footprints of keeping things in the cloud because of various external needs, regulatory needs, so on and so forth. So that's one part. Now coming back to the part that you talk about business applications, in fact, that is finding a really large growing need right now because customer connect and building up those scenarios in a contactless manner is really the need of the hour. Coupled with the business application platform is what we look at, say, Power Platform. Now, Power Platform is actually the latest thing that we have from our side as well. And that brings in the concept of citizen development. How do you look at the RPA solutions, etc.? Now, when you think about it, there are lots of processes which are led by manual efforts, labor, etc., in the organizations right now. How do you automate that? So the concept of citizen development, automation, simulation, led through Power Platform, which has inbuilt capabilities and connectors to a slew of industry available solutions, is something which is finding a lot of vibrancy from our customers, partners, and the startup ecosystem. And all these five solution areas that I talked about, each of them have a footprint in which we are kind of offering a lot of support, whether it's in terms of putting across tech help, POC support, joint GTM. These are things that we are doing very, very intentionally with the startup ecosystem as well.
Lovely. This is excellent, Irina. So, in terms of the startup, I mean, we have our friends over here who startups are mid-size and they will be dreaming to be a unicorn. Could you tell us something about the Highway to 100 Unicorns initiative by Microsoft, Irina?
Okay, I'll actually cover two programs in this context that we've started in the last few months. So, Highway to 100 Unicorns is where Microsoft engages with innovators and entrepreneurs through a series of outreach programs. And the focus here was on tier two cities because there is a lot which is happening by all the ecosystem providers, the partners, and everybody in tier one. So here we actually work very closely with the state governments to strengthen the startup ecosystem in every state. We've selected about 60 startups through the Highway to 100 Unicorn programs. And we've done this in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Kerala, Telangana, and they gain access to a year-long mentorship and a founder bootcamp. So this was held in Goa earlier as well. The other critical program that I'd also want to call out is the 100 by 100 by 100 program, which was there for B2B SaaS startups in India. What we did here was we brought together 100 early and growth startups with 100 committed companies, and we tried to ensure that there is a overall matchmaking which happens for the startups with the enterprises. Also, the participating companies they have a commitment for 100K over a period of 18 months on the solution provided through these SaaS startups as well.
Lovely, excellent, excellent. Thanks, Irina. I think we have one of our friends and CISOs in the audience, Mr. Venkat Kurapati. Could we have you online, please? Saurabh, could we check if Mr. Venkat is there and we could invite him to speak to us? Okay. Or Mr. Vipin Joshi? Mr. Vipin Joshi? Okay, all right. So, Irina, I think probably we don't have our friends here, but let me ask you one of the last questions as to what is your roadmap for next 5 years? We just have about, I think, 2 minutes to go, a minute or two to go. So, what's the cloud roadmap for startups by Microsoft? Could you throw some light on that? 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's an all-encompassing thing. So, at the heart of it is, I would say, two or three mantras. The first one that we talk about is tech intensity. So, ensuring that how do we increase and enhance the tech intensity of the startups so that nobody is kind of redoing things for which solutions are available. And secondly, putting across a multiplier along with the tech intensity with what the DT capability that is required of the industry. So we call this tech intensity raised to the power of trust. That is a very, very intentional work that we're doing across with with the entire ecosystem. The second part that we focus on very diligently is having all these solutions available on the cloud and the edge. And when I talk about this, a lot of the solutions which are coming across from the startup ecosystem will be actually catering to niche solutions in these areas. How do we ensure that they are able to cater to this entire gamut put together? And the third part that we are very closely working on is how do we ensure that the data and the AI capability, which are coming from the billions of devices, sensors, applications, users put together, how can they be intelligently aggregated insights provided in a real time manner? So there's a lot of innovation which is happening on those areas. So those would be my top three trends, philosophies, if you may, as we are working together on this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Congratulations, Irina. I think this tech intensity raised to the power of trust is beautiful. I think the Microsoft initiatives will, reinforce the trust that startups have in the brand called Microsoft. Many generations have crossed by, and Microsoft has impacted billions of lives across the globe. So it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure talking to you, Irina. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and the initiatives and the roadmap. I'm sure all our friends who are here as a part of the startup and the fast growing enterprises, founders and co-founders would have surely benefited from our interaction. So thanks once again to you and the Microsoft team and wish you good luck as you